16. Secrets hidden deeper. Do you think it's too early to start planning a baby shower for Dawson? Chili questioned as they sat in the rig, parked on the corner of the street down from Chicago Med. I want to make cupcakes. Emerson chuckled, shaking her head. I don't know. Maybe you should make a cake made out of diapers, she suggested as she put her cup of hot chocolate in the cup holder. Why the hell would you make a cake out of a diaper? Emerson shrugged, a little out of it for some reason. She had a lot on her mind lately, so she was a little distracted. Are you okay? Emerson was just about to answer Chili's question before their radios went off. 61, take a sick person at 4321 Wilcox. 61 to Maine en route. Emerson confirmed, buckling her seatbelt and driving away from their parking spot. I'm fine. She ended up answering Chili's question as she stared ahead and drove off. As they arrived and stepped out of the rig, all they heard was silence, and there wasn't anyone around. Hey, are you sure we have the right address? Chili questioned. 4321. Emerson pointed at the door, walking towards it. Hey, anybody there? She called out, and soon after someone rushed out of the door. Did you call an ambulance, sir? Yeah, come inside. He waved them in, leading the way. Emerson followed him immediately, focused on helping the person in need. Weller, Chili called, unsure about the safety of the environment inside. She wanted to call for help, but before the door could close, she hurried after her. Are you hurt, sir? She asked him, following him down the hallway. He suddenly stopped in his steps, pulling a gun on her. She jumped back and raised her hands right away. Drop your radios, he demanded, both of them complying. Emerson's heart sped up as she kept telling herself that there was no way she would make it out of this kind of position twice. They dropped their radios down, and the man gestured for them to walk into the next room. Emerson moved along right away, knowing better than to do otherwise. Plus, she heard Chili pushing a button on her radio before dropping it, causing Maine to look for anyone trying to reach them. Maybe they'd be found before something happened. Emerson and Chili put on their gloves, walking down the steps into another room. The stench was horrible, causing them to cover their mouths and noses with their hands, wondering what could possibly smell that bad. Their eyes fell on a man lying on the ground, struggling to breathe as he had a bleeding wound on his chest. Fix him, the man demanded, causing Chili to glare at him, but she was still the first to step forward. Sir, can you hear me? Chili asked as they bent down on either side of him, observing him closer. Shallow breathing. Pulse is weak and thready. Emerson uncovered his chest. He's losing a lot of blood. Blade could have nicked the heart, lacerated the spleen or liver. He needs to go into surgery now, she told Chili before turning to the man with the now lowered gun. We need to take him to the hospital. No, he refused, raising his gun. No hospitals, no cops. We don't care what you're doing in here. It's our job to save this guy's life, she retorted, hoping this guy would let them get out. Shut up, he spat, cutting her off. We've got to get an IV going, Chili said in hopes of calming down the man and getting him to lower his weapon. Listen to your friend. He's going to die here and you know it, she muttered under her breath, loud enough to be heard. She's right, Chili spoke up, focusing on the IV. We have to take him to a hospital. I said no hospitals. Look, this is just an anonymous sick person call. No one knows we're here. Just let us transport him to the hospital. You called us for a reason. I know you don't want him to die. Emerson tried to reason, and she really did think she was getting through to him, until he yelled and moved his gun around while keeping it pointed at her. Shut up. Get back to work. No. She had enough of people pointing guns at her to threaten her. Emerson just wished she could do her job without people interfering. Now it was her turn to make the decisions. You can shoot me, or you can let us go take him to the hospital so we can save his life. 2 choices, that's it, she spat, staring down the barrel of his gun as she stepped forward. Do it or let us go. Chili looked at her partner with worry, scared that she'd get shot. Luckily for them both, the man lowered his weapon and ran away. Emerson let out the breath she was holding in, watching him in confusion. He really left just like that? You're fine, huh? Chili questioned, unsure how to feel about the fact that her partner just told a man to shoot her. Emerson didn't answer, simply continuing the intervention with the man so they could get the hell away from there as fast as possible. Back at the firehouse, Emerson insisted on being left alone. She didn't want to speak or see anyone. The paramedic felt so many emotions all at once. She felt guilty from putting Chili in danger on that last call. If she hadn't run in, it wouldn't have happened. She felt sad about losing a mother a few days back, which led to a baby being left without any family. She felt hesitant, wondering if she should have came clean to her family about her reasons to come back to Chicago. So she laid down in bed, eyes staring up at the ceiling as she tried to clear her head by inhaling and exhaling deeply. It wasn't working much, but it slightly appeased her nerves. Just when she thought she was finally going to fall asleep, footsteps walking into the bunk room, only to stop right beside her bed. Emerson opened one eye, glancing at the person now standing at the edge of her bed, staring at her. Her lips slightly curved up at the sight as she pulled herself up in a seating position. Well, to what do I owe the pleasure? The tall brunette chuckled. Felt like visiting my favorite paramedic. You can't fool me, Detective Halstead. Emerson teasingly spoke, inviting him to sit on her bed by tapping on the mattress in front of her. Those eyes are screaming, I have something to tell you. He sat down and turned his head towards her as his body twisted to face her as much as he could. I spoke to Will a couple of days ago, and he told me about the baby you delivered. She sighed, running her fingers through her hair. Yeah, he's still in the nursery with no one to claim him. What about it? Will told me you seemed concerned about him, and I figured it might have something to do with you being adopted. So I did a little digging. He trailed off, observing her expression closely. Her eyes lit up at his words, encouraging him to go on. I found the father, and as we speak, he's with the baby. Emerson sighed in relief, bringing one hand to her mouth to hold back the gasp that almost left her lips. She felt a weight being lifted off her shoulder, a weight that wasn't even hers to begin with, but still. Tears welled up her eyes, touched that he'd do this for her. Well, maybe he did it more for the baby, but she'd like to think that part of it was for her too. Without saying anything else, she reached forward and wrapped her arms around him. Their thighs brushed together as he wrapped his own arms around her waist, pulling her body closer to his. Thank you, she whispered in his ear, unknowingly sending a shiver down his spine. You have no idea how much I needed this kind of news right now. Jay pulled away slowly, looking into her teary eyes as he held her at arm's length. Did something happen? She scoffed lightly, rolling her eyes. Oh, got held at gunpoint again. Emerson trailed off, noticing Jay observing her as if he wanted to make sure she wasn't hurt. Ended up fine, but turns out it's not much fun. I don't know how you do it. Jay let out a low chuckle. It's easier when you have a gun yourself. His hands lightly squeezed her sides where they rested before he completely pulled away from the hug. She felt her skin tingle all over, already missing the warmth and the comfort he brought her. Yeah, needles don't really stand a chance against guns, sadly. Her words made Jay laugh, nodding his head. I should head back to work, he reluctantly said, standing up as his phone rang in his pocket. If you need anything, even if it's just to talk, call me. Jay told her, pointing an accusing finger at her since she hadn't called anyone when she wasn't doing well today. Noted. Thank you, Jay. She smiled at him, watching as he sent her back a smile while walking away. A few days later, Gabby was brought into the hospital with huge stomach aches. Turns out the pregnancy was abdominal and she had to be brought in for surgery. Everyone at the firehouse was worried sick, and it didn't help that they got the news that Molly's was shut down. Everybody was on edge and couldn't tolerate getting another bad news. Emerson decided to load up the ambo, feeling like she had to keep busy, otherwise she'd go crazy. Jimmy, who was cleaning the truck's windows, walked up to her. Hey, need some help? Do you ever just want to hit something or scream like really loudly into a pillow? She rhetorically questioned, adding the second part as it seemed much more like her. It's so messed up, she said, not even looking up at him as she placed the items in their designated areas. Hey, Dawson's in good hands. Yeah, I know. It's just, there's nothing we can do about it except wait. I just feel like there should be something that we can do about Molly's, at least, she explained to him. She hated the fact that they all had no control over anything that was happening. It was just bad news after bad news with nothing to do. Dawson shouldn't have to come out of this and deal with that. What if I told you there might be something we could do? Jimmy started as Emerson looked right at him with hope-filled eyes. I could call my cousin Anthony. He's in construction. If there's a way around a building code, he'll find it. That would be great, she smiled, feeling hopeful for the first time since the news began to break. Seconds later, they got a call, so Jimmy grabbed the box for her and set it down before rushing to Truck 81, ready to roll out. When they got back, Herman got a call, so everyone gathered around, waiting to hear what it was about. They figured it had something to do with Gabby from how fast he answered. Herman started, seeming hesitant after he hung up. Gabby's in the ICU, she's doing great, the baby didn't make it. He announced, and everyone's heart dropped. They knew Gabby, and they knew how much she wanted a baby. So did Matt. They were the two most deserving people they knew. It was unfair that this was all happening to them. The important thing is Gabby's doing okay. Mouch spoke up first while everyone still processed the news. Bowden's there, so it means 51 is there. They know that we're thinking about them, and when the time comes, we'll be there for them. Okay? Everyone agreed and got back to work. Luckily for Emerson, Ambulance 61 got a call not much later, keeping her busy just like she wanted. Once at the hospital, she decided to stop by the ICU to see how Gabby was doing. Chief Bowden was the first to walk up to her. Hey, Emerson. Hey, Chief, how's she doing? Just woke up a few minutes ago, he told her, both of them glancing at Matt and Gabby talking inside her room. A few seconds later, Matt walked up to them with a frown on his face. How is she? Emerson asked, worried about one of the first friends she made in Chicago. I think she's still in shock. Emerson shrugged. Well, she's been through a lot. She might need time to process everything. You both do, Chief added. I know. Anyway, she's asking for you both, Matt said, gesturing for them to go. They were both surprised but weren't going to say no. Emerson walked ahead, leading the way to Gabby's room. She sat on the edge of Gabby's bed, gently grabbing her hand in hers. Thanks for coming. She lowly spoke, her voice scratchy. We're just glad you're all right. How you feeling? Bowden asked. Okay, I guess, she answered, closing her eyes for a few seconds before opening them again and glancing at Matt. Is the doctor coming soon? Are you in pain? Emerson asked. Do you want me to get a nurse? No, I just want an update on how the baby's doing, Gabby said, and all of their hearts dropped. Emerson knew for a fact that Matt had to have told her the baby didn't make it. She felt sad for her friend, and she wished things could have gone another way for her. Emerson turned towards Matt. Casey, why don't you pop out and ask the nurse when the doctor's going to be by? Seconds after Casey stepped out, Gabby's heartbeat flatlined, and Emerson immediately pushed the code blue button. Nurses came rushing in as Bowden stepped out to call out for Matt. Will rushed in too, putting on his gloves. Something broke loose. She's rebleeding. Call the OR. Start pounding those fluids and call for blood. Bag her. Let's intubate. Will ordered around. She's crashing. The rest of the firehouse joined them at the hospital. A piece of the placenta was hidden behind the bowel. When it broke loose, Gabby started bleeding again. Emerson told them as they all gathered around her in the waiting room. What? They just missed stuff? Herman spoke in disbelief. Rebleeding is really common in cases like this, Chili informed him. A lot of the time, the docs have to go back in. Well, what kind of odds are we talking about here? Cruz asked, obviously stressed about all of this. I think she's going to do great. Really. Let's just keep a good thought, Emerson said, her eyes meeting Jimmy's, who nodded at her reassuringly. Later on, Cindy brought food for them. They immediately dug in as Jimmy walked up to Emerson after taking a phone call. She frowned, wondering what was up when he gestured for her to follow him. Lieutenant? Herman turned around at his title being called out. I got something I need to look into. I know that this is a bad time, but, could these guys give me a ride? Jimmy asked, gesturing to Emerson to let him know he was talking about the paramedics. If there's a call, we can get him there, Emerson suggested, figuring it might have something to do with what he told her earlier about his cousin Anthony. Yeah, sure. Just keep your ear to that radio. They stepped off the ambulance and met with Jimmy's cousin, who was already checking the distance between Molly's and the curb. Hey, Anthony. Thanks for coming. No problem. How's your pop doing? Eh, Dad, this is Chili and Emerson. Jimmy introduced them, watching his cousin turn around. Hey, how you do? He cut himself off as his eyes fell on both women. Ladies, hello. Very pleased to meet you. Any friend of Jimmy's is a friend of mine. The paramedics chuckled as Jimmy cut him off, a smirk on his lips. Anthony, what's the story? I don't know what to tell you. Code says you have to be 15 feet from the curb. That's 13. 13 ain't 15. He informed them just as Chili caught sight of the couple walking by the bar. Oh, hey, you happy now? Oh, I'm sorry if you're upset about your little pub, but the laws are the laws. The woman shrugged, pushing her stroller. We just care about the neighborhood. The woman's husband added, and Emerson refrained from rolling her eyes at them. Yeah? Just keep walking. Chili spat as Emerson called her name in a warning tone. Jimmy smiled, amused as he glanced at them before turning back to his cousin who was observing Molly's. I'm sorry. I wish I had a different. He cut himself off, pausing before speaking up again. How old is this structure? Oh, I remember Herman saying something about it being around since Prohibition. Emerson spoke, recalling one of the many dreaded conversations she had with the older firefighter. Jimmy, grab me one of the baggies I got in my toolbox. Jimmy listened to his cousin, getting right to it. You ever hear of Joliet Lamont Limestone? Ambulance 61, man down from unknown causes. 2129W Harrison. Is that? Emerson trailed off, recognizing the address. County Morgue. Chili finished for her, both of them equally confused. Yo, we gotta go, she called out to Jimmy. Stick around. I'll give you a ride. Anthony called out to his cousin, who glanced back at the paramedics to make sure. He gestured for them to go, watching them drive away with lights and sirens. They arrived on scene and took out the gurney, the monitor, and the jump bag before heading to the worker that was waiting for them. This never happened before. I mean, I heard stories like in Poland or Brazil or China. Sir, Chili cut off his rambling, reminding him to get to the point. Lionel, I'm just an assistant. I'm not the ME. I'm really not trained to deal with this sort of thing. Okay, Lionel, just take a deep breath. I'm supposed to take him from the gurney to the tables so Dr. Wu could do the autopsy, and the son of a bitch moved. Emerson and Chili froze in the doorway, noticing the supposedly dead person sitting up on the table. They took a second to register what was happening before walking up to him. Sir, do you know your name? Chili asked, pressing her hand on his shoulder to catch his attention. She then made him lie down as he wasn't reacting much. Did he say anything to you? Emerson questioned the ME's assistant. If he talked to me, I'd be passed out next to him, not standing here with you. The man answered, still slightly panicked, which Emerson understood, but it wasn't helpful for her. She turned to put the pads on him right as he passed out. He's out. Lionel, I need you to tell me everything you can about this man, Chili demanded, watching as he grabbed the man's file, searching through it for anything they might need. He trailed off, reading as quickly as he could through the panic. Noah Arkin, pronounced DOA in the field. Untreatable fine VFib. Lionel listed as Emerson caught a rhythm on the monitor. Bradycardia. Heart rate's 30 beats a minute. Does he have a heart condition? Emerson asked Lionel, waiting for him to look through the papers. History of Wolff-Parkinson's White syndrome. I wonder if that's why they called it in the field. Bradycardia is super rare in WPW. These patients usually have a rapid ventricular response. Nobody would suspect a low heart rate. She pointed out, helping Chili with the UV line. Pushing atropine. Chili called out, pushing in the drug as Emerson monitored his heart rate. Heart rate's up to 65. Only a few seconds later, the monitor started beeping slower. Oh, he's dropping. Pace him. Chili ordered, and Emerson grabbed the pads right away. 70 joules. Pace him at 80 beats per minute. As soon as they got the results they wanted, Chili sent her a thumbs up, and they started getting him ready to go. You're just going to keep shocking him? Lionel asked, obviously troubled. Can I get a hand? Chili asked, ready to transfer him to their gurney. He's not dead, she reasoned when Lionel didn't seem like he wanted to come any close to him. The defibrillator's acting as a pacemaker. It looks weird, but it's actually keeping him stable. She explained to him as they transferred him, rolling him out of the morgue and back to the hospital. As they got there, they were informed that Gabby was out of surgery and recovery. They were sitting in the waiting room with the rest of the firehouse as Jimmy walked in and handed Herman a letter. Emerson looked straight at Jimmy, who looked at her and sent her a half smile. The unique materials qualify the structure as historically significant. Herman read out loud as he stood up, unsure if he understood properly. Molly's officially can't be torn down or altered in any way, Jimmy announced, noticing the two paramedics in the corner bumping fists happily. Wait. How is that even possible? Otis questioned, standing up to look at the letter for himself. Joliet Lamont Limestone and Cousin Anthony. Does that assemblage of words mean anything to you? Mouch asked everyone, still confused. It's the bricks on the front of Molly's, Mouch. Chili informed him as she and Emerson stood up. Apparently, it's rare. Serious old Chicago stuff. Used to be everywhere, but most of the old buildings with it got destroyed, so Anthony... Who's in construction? Chili added on to Jimmy's story. Legitimately, Emerson pointed out, sending a smile to Jimmy, who continued. Helped me get the application for historical status to the committee. They approved it right away. Molly's can reopen tonight. Jimmy finished, and Emerson glanced at Otis and Herman with a large smile on her face, glad they could find a solution, which wouldn't have happened without Jimmy and Cousin Anthony. Wow, kid, you're amazing, Herman gratefully said, taking Jimmy into his arms as they laughed. As they separated and Herman hugged Otis, Emerson slipped closer to Jimmy. Thank you, she mouthed with a large smile on her face, to which he answered with a nod and a smile. Shortly after, Matt came out to update them on Gabby so they could head back to the firehouse. Ladies and gentlemen, today we almost lost two really important things to us. Our home away from home and a person who's the heart of this home. And as much as I love this joint, if it came down to choosing between this and my friend, I'd give up 1,000,000 mollies for one Gabby Dawson. And luckily, God in all his wisdom decided to bless us twice. So let's say a few cheers for our beloved Mollies, and way more important, our friend Gabby. Herman raised his glass and spoke in front of every single person who could make it to Molly's after shift, celebrating their wins. Here, everyone called, drinking from their glasses. After giving Herman a pep talk about being the best person to raise someone else's spirit, Emerson moved on to Will. Hello, Dr. Halstead, she spoke, wrapping one arm around him and the other around Jimmy, who was sitting next to him. Hey, Emerson, he chuckled, hearing the slight slur in her voice. Enjoying your night? I am, especially since you saved my first new friend in Chicago. She started, trailing off with a large smile on her face before she turned to Jimmy. And you. Our second home. Emerson spoke with eyes filled with tears. Is the tough Emerson Weller getting emotional on us? Will teased, jokingly nudging her. She rolled her eyes and pushed him away, laughing with him. Not anymore. She rolled her eyes, turning to Jimmy. All the thanks goes to you. I take back what I said about him. Emerson winked, squeezing Jimmy into a side hug before walking away. Although she didn't notice Jimmy watching her walk away right under Will's eyes, who observed the dynamic between them closely, intrigued.